all of us, the NHS is personal, and some of you will have heard this before, but my mum was a nurse, a very, very proud nurse. My sister was a nurse. My wife works in the NHS at the moment in one of the big London hospitals. Her mum was an NHS doctor, and therefore this runs through me. And of course, again, as some of you will have heard, that my mum had Still's disease when she was 11 years old, and this was a very aggressive illness for her that turned out to mean that she went from having the NHS as her livelihood, if you like, to it being her absolute lifeline every single day, depending on the NHS. And that's what I grew up with, knowing the NHS through my mum, in and out of hospitals, in and out of high dependency units, and seeing for myself as a young teenage boy the work that the NHS did, in my particular case with my mum, but every time I tried to say thank you, they reminded me they did this for somebody else's mum, sister, brother, granddad, child, every single day. And so thank you for what you are doing. And I know that the last 14 years have been really, really hard. We've had austerity, we haven't had the right money and resources, we've had a reorganisation of the NHS that made no sense and made things worse, then had the burden of COVID, and everything that followed after that. And frankly, you deserve a lot better than that. And I know that when the waiting lists are so high, that has an effect on the morale of every single person working in the NHS who are doing their level best, but sort of really up against it. And I think that's the context in which this 10-year plan has to be seen, because this is a government that's not just come in to say thank you, as we rightly do, for what you're doing. It's not just a government that comes in and says we're going to get the NHS back on its feet, is exactly what you would expect. But we want to go further than that. We want to make sure that under this Labour government, the NHS isn't just working a little bit better than it is now. We all want that. Everybody is entitled to that. We want an NHS which is reimagined, made fit for the future, so that we can be as proud as we are. Every time there's the anniversary of the NHS being set up, all of us, myself included, are really proud of the 70, 75, however many extra years now on top of that the NHS has been going. We look back with great pride at that post-war Labour government that set up the NHS. What we want to achieve is a situation where we reimagine the NHS, make it fit for the future, and where in 10, 20, 30 years people look back at what we did and say that was the government, that government of 2024, that Labour government, that made sure the NHS is fit for the next 75 years. And we want you to be part of that, not just because you're working within the NHS, but of course because you will have the best ideas. And as Wes said, when he's been doing media on this, some people have pressed him as to why do you need to do a consultation. I'll tell you exactly why. I ran the Crown Prosecution Service for 5 years. I had 7,000 staff. We did every prosecution in every criminal court in England and Wales. We had 100 offices, and in the first year or two I went to every single office. I got the staff together and I asked them, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing in this office in the work that you're doing? And they knew, because they faced it every day, what the biggest challenge was. And then I asked them, what's your best idea for fixing the particular problem you've got? Because, as you know, if you go to work every day and you're confronted with a particular problem, you start to think, well, how are we going to fix this? And therefore, we want to hear from you and from as wide a number of people as possible, both in the NHS and people who are using the NHS, because this needs to be the once-in-a-generation opportunity for you to put your fingerprints on the future, literally to craft the service that you are working for. So this is a really important conversation to create that NHS of the future, a moment in our history. And, you know, there are some obvious things that I think that we do need to do. We need to go from analogue to digital. We need to use much better technology. Whether that's in the ambulance service, in our hospitals, in our neighbourhoods, making much more use of technology. And there are so many examples of AI and scans and radiologists working together to achieve much greater results. Plenty of examples like that. I genuinely think that we need to make a neighbourhood health service, much closer to people in their community. You will be familiar with cases where people don't access the health care that they need when they need it because it's not close enough to them. Or too many people go to the hospital A&E when they should and will be better dealt with closer to home. So we need to move to that model. And then the preventative piece, if we can get in early and prevent people becoming as ill as they sometimes become, what a game changer that would be. And I'll just give you one example. Some of my colleagues have heard it more than once, but it is absolutely etched in my mind. I went to Alderhay Hospital, which is a brilliant children's hospital, and we actually went to the ward where they were dealing with heart operations on 2-year-olds. This was really humbling, by the way, to see the brilliant NHS staff, to see, in my case, a young 2-year-old who just had massive heart surgery, really brave little boy and his family. Really inspiring and humbling. But in that same visit to the children's hospital, I learned that the biggest cause of admission to that hospital, Alderhay, and to all children's hospitals for 6 to 10-year-olds is children coming in to have their teeth taken out because they're decaying, something that could have been prevented. It's a small example, but I felt really angry on behalf of the NHS staff that they were being asked to do operations which didn't really need to be done if somebody had stepped in earlier. There are so many examples of preventative measures that we could take. Now, there's some of our ideas about how the NHS needs to go forward. It is broken but not beaten, and that's important. And I know it's hard when you work in the NHS to hear that it's broken. As I say, my wife and I have pretty well an evening conversation about the morale in the staff in her hospital. It's really, really tough. But people do prefer us to say, this is the state of it, we're going to fix it. We're not just going to make it better run, we're going to make it transform so that it's fit for the future. And imagine the pride that you will all have of putting your fingerprints on the NHS of the future. It's an amazing opportunity for all of us. So we want to take this forward. We want people to feed into this. We're absolutely determined to do this. We're a mission-driven government, and that means we're a government with a driving sense of purpose and a real sense of priorities. We have 5 missions, only 5, and one of them is making the NHS fit for the future. So this is one of the big themes of this government, and all of our decisions are taken according to whether they help or hinder the mission. So this is vital work for us as we go forward. Please get involved in the conversation. Feed in your ideas, help us build the NHS fit for the future, and think of the pride that future generations will have that this Labour government it took the NHS from the situation it's in at the moment, picked it up and made it fit for the future. Thank you so much.